Hello again. I think that most viewers are aware of the fact, even if they do not speak it out loud, that a war is being waged upon the very idea of whiteness and white civilization. Few spell out precisely what they mean by this as clearly as American academic Susan Sontag, who described white civilization as a cancer. But nevertheless, this is the prevailing trend among progressive and liberal types in Europe and America. Instead of pride in the achievements of white civilization, we are instead urged to feel shame. Susan Sontag explained why in an essay that she wrote. She said, "The truth is that Mozart, Pascal, Boolean algebra, Shakespeare, parliamentary government, Baroque churches, Newton, the emancipation of women, Kant, Marx, ballet, etc., don't redeem what this particular civilization has wrought upon the world."
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. I just hope that you're doing fine wherever you are today. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about this American writer called Susan Sontag. Susan Sontag, he quoted, "The white race is the cancer of human history." And today we are also going to have an historian who is also going to explore, critically look at what she said. And I know this topic is a thought provocative, and we need to think deep and look at into the statements that she said, because this essay, it's an essay that she wrote in 1967 titled "What's Happening in America." And today, looking at everything which is happening in America, I think we need to look at things in a critical way. But again, let's hear what this historian has to say. Now, just a short intro before just diving right into the video. Maybe some people might want to know, who is this Susan Sontag? So Susan Sontag was born in 1993 to 2004. He was an influential American writer, a filmmaker, a philosopher, and cultural critic for her sharp intellect and wide-ranging works on topics such as art, politics, and photography and illness. So essays such as Notes on Camp and Against Interpretation challenge the conventional thinking and explore the complexities of modern culture. Sontag was also a passionate human rights advocate, and her writing often critiqued the moral and political shortcomings of Western society. Amongst her work that she has done that we're today going to explore using this historian, who I'm just gonna a minute from now, I'm gonna be introducing him, and you're gonna hear what he's going to say about Susan Sontag with this essay. Throughout her career, she earned a reputation as one of the most provocative and original thinkers of the 20th century. So join me today as we dive right into this video. And I need to ask you this question: do you think what she said is true, that white race is the cancer of human history? I would like to know before even jumping right into the video. But until then, let's dive right into the video and really get to see what these professor said about it. So let's dive right into it.
A cultural war which portrays every evil in the world as proceeding from the activities of white civilization. It is for this reason that the only slavery of which anybody talks is the transatlantic slave trade, because that was the one carried out by white people. That's why we hear so much about imperialism and colonialism, because these evils are said to have been an integral part of the growth of white civilization. The destruction of the planet via the mechanism of climate change is alleged to be imminent and will strike hardest against the less economically developed nations of Africa, Asia and the Pacific. Who is responsible for the devastation which is about to strike? Why, we are, of course. The Industrial Revolution began in England and was what triggered the industrialisation of the rest of the world, with supposedly catastrophic consequences for the rest of the planet. Not only that, but the mechanisation of such things as mills in the north of England stimulated the demand for cotton from America, and so was inextricably linked to the transatlantic slave trade, because it was slaves who picked the cotton. All the supposedly good things which have been produced since the 19th century by white civilization, ranging from mains electricity and lighting to cheap consumer goods and wonderful music and literature, have been part of the problem from this perspective, rather than a blessing which we have shared with the rest of the world. All the art and science, literature and philosophy and so on have been created by this dreadful system which is founded upon the destruction of the earth and exploitation of those in hot countries. Unless we understand this skewed point of view, we are not going to be able to understand why almost all the people we now see in advertisements are black. We are not going to be able to make sense of the way in which immigration from Africa and Asia is actively encouraged by the British government. We will not know why every television programme, even historical dramas, has black people forced into it. Unless we know about the war on whiteness, we will not see why the BBC's selection of great books, which they made for the Platinum Jubilee this year, leaves out famous authors such as Evelyn Waugh, Graham Greene, C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and consists of black authors of whom we have never heard. The war on whiteness is a real thing. It may not have been declared openly, but it now affects every aspect of our lives in Britain. Intellectuals like Susan Sontag, who may be seen in the thumbnail to this video, are the ideologues behind this pernicious struggle.
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope we are doing better. If you're not doing better, at least try. I know a friend of mine usually say like that. If you're not doing better, at least try. So, the quote, "The white race is the cancer of human history," is often attributed to what Susan Sontag usually say, because people see him as a critique, as a cultural critique, and he will go into a culture and critique it. And that didn't deter her from also critiquing the culture that she comes from. And in one of her articles, she wrote about, what's the problem with America. And so amongst other things that she talked about, we landed into this topic that the white race is the cancer of human history. So I know this is thought provocative, but I really want to know, what do you think about this? Just before looking at his arguing points, because I'm going to explore the arguing points that she gave while writing this essay. And I believe that we're going to have, a debative conversation. We're going to have an important conversation out of this, because this is very, very heavy, just to say. And we need people from the white community to also let us know what they think. We need people from the black community to also let us know what they think, because I'm going to be laying this comment section for every group to let me know what they think about this, and also let's educate each other. So one of her talking points was he critiqued the Western imperialism and colonialism. And I'm just going to look through the article. So Sontag's argument, Sontag was critical of the way Western, predominantly white nations have historically used imperialism and colonialism to dominate and exploit other parts of the world. She saw this as a form of cultural and economic violence that had devastating effects on non-Western societies. And she went ahead and gave an example of, She went ahead and gave an example of the scramble for Africa. And everyone is acquainted for this, right? Now, European powers colonized vast portion of Africa in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, leading to exploitation of resources, the subjugation of local population, and the disruption of indigenous cultures. The legacy of colonial borders and economic exploitation still affects many African nations today. Yeah, I know to the stance where we be talking about, Africans left their spirituality and they adopted Christianity as a fact, and the type of alienation that I think somebody could argue at that point. At that, I will give the scramble for Africa was something which was uncalled for. And I know some people will argue that, yes, we brought civilization to the world. Now you're wearing clothes, you can speak English. It is because of, white people, or it is because of us. Yes, it's always good to look at things on, both sides. But again, we can't turn behind and look at things as if nothing really happened during these times, So another argument point is the Americas. The colonization of the Americas by the European power led to the near extermination of indigenous people. The transatlantic slave trade and the imposition of European cultural norms and economic systems, which had a long devastating impacts on descendants of indigenous and enslaved people. So I'm also going to be talking about environmental destruction as one of his argument point that Susan Sontag argued while writing the essay. So he talked about Sontag believed that Western civilization pursuit of industrialization and economic growth at the expense of the environment was another way in which it acted as a cancer on the planet. The prioritization of profit over ecological sustainability has led to environmental degradation on a global scale. Totally makes sense because, nature and environment, these are one of the most important parts of human surroundings, while taking them from these is really seen as a degrading the life of a human being in the way that they are not getting sufficient from the environment because of the destruction of this. Now, he gave an example of deforestation in the Amazon. Now, driven by the demand for resources such as the timber, soy, and cattle, deforestation in the Amazon has accelerated in recent decades, leading to destruction of vital ecosystems and contributing to climate change, amongst other things that she talks about. Talking about environmental destruction, we're going to be looking at industrial pollution as also a talking point under environmental destruction. Now, the Industrial Revolution, which began in Western Europe, introduced unprecedented levels of pollution into the atmosphere, soils, and water. The legacy of pollution is still relevant today in the form of climate change, loss of biodiversity, and widespread environmental degradation, amongst other things. Also, in her argument, she also pointed out the point of cultural hegemony and racism. Sontag criticized the cultural hegemony of the West, which she saw as imposing its values and norms to the rest of the world. The hegemony of often manifested in racist ideologies that dehumanized non-white people and justified their exploitation and oppression. And she went ahead and gives an example. Jim Crow laws in the United States following the abolition of slavery in the US enforced segregation laws that institutionalized racism and kept Black Americans in a state of social and economic inferiority. The legacy of laws continues to influence the racial disparities in the US until today. At this point, I think Black Americans or African Americans, you can tell me what to think about this, because for me, I highly resonate with this. I really, really highly resonate with this because these are her talking points that she gave. I'm also going to talk about the apartheid in South Africa. Cultural hegemony and the cultural hegemony and racism. We talked about Jim Crow laws in the United States, of what until today we look at as discrimination based on race, color, and other things that we can also be talking about. Apartheid in the South Africa. Now let's talk about the apartheid in South Africa. The system of apartheid implemented by the white minority government in South Africa legally enforced racial segregation and discrimination against Black majority. Because I know the demographics of South Africa, we have the Black majority, we have the white, and we also have other groups, white people as minority, but they also still implemented and imposed, the segregation which they imposed to these cultures. So this system was justified through a racist ideology that portrayed white people as superior. That's also a talking point. Another talking point that she supports what she says is the militarism and the global conflict. I know this is now a little bit sensitive, but let's buckle up for this. Now, in her argument, Sontag saw the militarism of Western nations, particularly their involvement in global conflicts, as another way in which they acted as destructive force in human history. This includes ways in which wars have been waged to protect or expand the Western interests. often at the expense of non-Western population. So, for example, we're going to be talking about the Vietnam War as one of allusions. So, Vietnam War, the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam was driven by the Cold War imperatives and resulted in widespread destruction in Vietnam, including the use of chemical weapons like Agent Orange, which had devastating effects on the environment and human health. Middle East conflict. Now, Western powers have been deeply involved in the conflict in the Middle East, often in pursuit of strategic interests such as oil. The invasion of Iraq in 2003, for example, led to massive loss of life, destabilizing of the region, and long-term consequences that are still being felt until today. So those are one of her argument points that she talked about. So the fifth one was criticism of Western moral superiority. Sontag's argument, Sontag critiqued the idea that Western civilization was morally superior, to other cultures. She argued that this belief was often used to justify acts of violence and oppression against Western people who were seen as lesser or barbaric. She went ahead and gave an example. European colonization often justified their actions by claiming they were bringing civilization to savage people. These paternalistic, attitudes ignore the rich cultures and histories of the colonized people and was used to legitimize exploitation and violence. She also went ahead and talked about civilizing missions. The concept of white man's burden, popularized by Rudyard Kipling, encapsulated the idea that it was the duty of a white European to civilize non-white people, the burden of a white man, right? So, a notion that underpinned many colonial policies and justified the subjugation of the entire population. That's all I had to say about this, and I tried to look into what Susan Sontag shared, and the examples, the anecdotes that she shared are amongst other things that I've told you in the video. Feel free to let me know what you think about this topic. What can you say about this? Do you agree with what Susan Sontag displayed or what I've read to you amongst her argument points that she gave? I really want to know what you think about this. Until then, this is your presenter, Eugene Doc Stories, and let me see you in my next video. Peace, love, and reparations. Salute.